Just so we can do a sound check. Hello. But can you, everybody hear?
Yeah. Why?
Okay, so to the floor, I mean, does anybody have a particular question for a particular poet that we have here on this lovely plinth within this wonderful building? Anything for William Williams?
Yeah, what is that about reading Williams and not telling us that it was... You did say 1943.
Oh, come on! Everybody...
I thought you wrote that in 1943.
Everybody who knows anything.
Nobody knows anything.
Knows that Spring and All is a classic published in 1923 of American poetry and was reissued by New Directions recently. No, I mean, you knew it was.
Well, I did.
Yeah, I mean...
I did because you wouldn't pay so much attention to Rosemary.
I didn't know. I didn't know.
Oh, well. Sorry. Apologies. No, I didn't choose, I mean, I deliberately didn't choose the famous Red Wheelbarrow, you know, because, yeah, I thought it was a more interesting poem.
Or also an asphodel.
Pardon?
Asphodel.
Oh, no, Asphodel is late.
It's late and
It's
long.
late, William. You haven't read your Williams for a while. I recommend it.
Oh yeah, but it's true, it made me want to read him again.
Yeah. No, I know it's just sort of,
Is that?
that's what I'm in the tradition of. And by extension Todd, but Williams, there's more to Williams, you know.
No, that's true. All of you sound awfully Poundian for Tom and myself.
Well,
No, just kidding. No, but that's of course. But you know, I would just talk about Williams because I saw a copy of Farmer's Daughters in a box at University of Connecticut in the library, and the librarian opened it for me, and it just was typed on cheap paper, and just flakes came out of it like snow. Well, if this box is opened 3 more times, there will be no more original manuscripts of Farmer's Daughters. Dr. Williams typed it on very cheap paper that somebody gave him in exchange for medical services.
Oh yeah, well, they didn't know about paper.
CSI poetry.
Great idea.
In a way, when Andrei and I yesterday visited the London Book Fair, and there wasn't a poetry section.
Thank God you didn't say. Sorry, I'll go home now.
There were lots of books that they wouldn't allow me to buy, which I thought was a kind of a particularly fair book fair.
Well, I think you shouldn't be allowed to buy books. I mean, the old booksellers in the old days, you know, they used to be very jealous of their books. Like I worked at the 8th bookstore, and you came in and you tried to buy a book, and then the clerks frowned. They said,
Yeah.
It's like in the second-hand bookstores in Stockholm.
right, these are mine. Yeah.
They chess with the owner and then start talking.
Yeah, do you deserve this book?
One went into it and asked for a book and he said, this is not how you do it in a second-hand bookstore.
Antiquarian. I mean,
Antiquarian, yeah.
they call them antiquarian books.
You know what? That's
Stockholm,
what.
I translated it into English.
No, I know, but there is a qualitative difference. You know.
Okay, this was an antiquarian.
Go on, grow your books in Cambridge. It was
Oh,
it
yeah.
was a poetry bookstore that was very,
Oh, it's amazing.
the owner was extremely fussy about what you bought. And she sort of matched it to the book, and if she thought you didn't belong to the book, she wouldn't sell it to you.
No, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Any questions?
When was the last time you read together? I know, Gunnar, you never met Andrei before, have you? But Anselm, Andrei and Tom, have you read together previously, all in one evening?
No.
Never?
No, Anselm and I have, but
We have.
we read in New York
Yeah,
actually
and,
about 3 months before Allen Ginsberg died. Remember, we went to the Ukrainian
yeah.
restaurant
Well,
and
that
took
was
pictures.
big public reading,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, these guys know each other a lot longer.
We read together in Gothenburg in
Oh.
18 or 19.
1850.
And we read in New York in 91.
That's right.
And then I,
Yeah, so we have, yeah, we've done this before.
20th century stuff.
And it's what Tom had read
Yeah.
together. And you and Tom had read together.
Anselm.
Oh,
And some of them I've read in different places.
yeah, no, I think so. I think so. I mean, God knows, you know. We certainly have, yeah.
Well, I mean, were you at the Berkeley conference in 1965? Were you there at some point?
I'm-
Breakfast of conscience.
The famous conference in Berkeley in
Oh, no, I was.
1965 or something, when
Yeah,
Olson was sort of crowned as king of American poetry.
I know. I know, yeah,
The historic event.
yeah. Oh, yeah, it was.
Tom, were you involved in the scene when Ginsberg gave that, you know, the famous, you know,
Well, we were sitting down in the middle of the place there, I remember, taking bits of the movie.
oh, you were at the event.
In Albert Hall?
I saw that on some footage of that the other day, and he was, you know, Ginsberg's reading, and there's a hippie behind him doing, you know, all sorts of, you know, cutting some shapes. And I wondered what he must have thought of that, or whatever. Were there lots of other things happening around that time that generated a place for poetry, or was it something unique?
That seemed to be a sort of one-off at the time, but there was a lot of things going on the road, it seemed to me at that time. Michael Horowitz, Pete Brown, Ted Milton, Spike Hawkins, all those people leading into the Liverpool scene and so on. So on the road, that was the major event.
Mm. Did it make a difference to the ability to get published, or was
I have no idea.
no?
we copied that reading in Stockholm in 1973 in the old Parliament building that was then under repair, and we were reading for 12 hours as a protest against the publishers not publishing poetry. And they show. Oh, that was great. I mean, it was
Strengthened their argument.
3,000 people came there. But the good thing was that we had loudspeakers on the outside of the house, which is the name where it's situated between the Royal Opera and the Royal Castle. And the king had wondered, because one of the poets, he had the Crow Symphony, which sounded several miles certainly, and the king wondered what it was. And the opera singer, Birgit Nilsson, she phoned and complained because she was, so to say, singing up her voice in the opera.
Well, for a brief time, I think poetry had a lot more listeners than readers.
Yeah.
And that was probably that period of late 60s, 70s, when there were giant crowds showing up for reading. in San Francisco for various causes, for various reasons.
Is it slightly strange to have this kind of reunion in London when most of you, well, Tom and Anselm and Andrei, really, the US has been a huge part of your...
That was sort of Michael Horowitz was mentioned, and there was a series of New Departures readings, which, you know, had various crowd participating. Piero Helixer, the late Piero Helixer, Adrian Mitchell, yeah, most of them dead now. Yeah, I mean, it was still sort of sporadic, but I think Alan Brownjohn, for instance, was also active. I mean, I guess he's still alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, various other people sympathized with the idea. But it wasn't, you know, the early 60s were not a great time of poetry, for poetry readings, I would say. I mean, it was sort of an underground activity. And I remember anecdotally, yeah. Robert Creeley, who was visiting over from the States, patiently waiting for a young woman to perform a kind of snake dance while he was waiting to get on stage. She says, you know, I never thought I would be in a circus, you know. I mean, you know, he was happy with it. But it was sort of on that level, you know. It wasn't, I don't know if it's become too serious now, you know. Pas sérieux is what the French called that, you know. Oh, that's not serious, you know. But I mean, some of those were the best of times. Are you soft? I'm getting into reminiscence and tinged by tainted possibly by nostalgia.
Okay.
Do any of you have a poem that you particularly like that has been written by the people sitting next to you?
Oh.
I like all this
And if
stuff.
so, why do you like it?
There's a question
I
from
was
the
thinking
lawyer.
about that.
You know, it's a good question because poets, there are many poets who are friends and don't particularly know, you know, but I mean, I do know a lot of Anselm's poems, I do know. And I quote often the poem, "Are you coming to bed? Are you coming to Tibet?" is what I heard. I've never been there. I don't want to go there, which is, you know, introduced sort of in a very serious way. The idea of mishearing is a very, you know, important poetic technique. I've taught it to my students for a long time, so I know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Um,
But I mean, that's the only specific I can give you.
um, yeah. Well, no, I mean, there's so many things in the English language canon that, you know, one might mention, but I always felt that in my own writing, certainly, I did not have to memorize anything. I don't have any memory of, I had to read them all again off the page, because I hated memorization, which was forced down my throat with, you know, the Kalavala. And, you know, so, I mean, that is my bias, in a sense. But I recognize all of Shakespeare's sonnets as being superb, and also John Donne's Servants, Dryden, etc. You know, I had German classics rammed down my throat, and I found them incredibly boring. The Romantics. They're Romantics, which somehow managed to transformed by people like Coleridge into very interesting poetry. So that's my story.
Gunnar, I mean,
It's immediate to mind, actually.
yeah, Anselm mentions John Donne, and you're just
I made a book of his poems that just came out in Sweden. Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
So watch out for Sweden in the future. They've now got John Donne.
That's actually the first full book of John Donne's poetry produced in Sweden.
To win the next World Cup.
Sorry?
They'll win the next World Cup now.
Yeah, oh yeah. For me it's not really, but I mean, two books were very important by my neighbors in the 60s. It was Tom's The Big Green Day and Anselm's The Coherencies. I think these are both from around 60s.
Yeah.
And they impressed me both. A lot to me. But I don't know any of the poems by heart, but I translated from both of them.
Yeah.
That's the best way to avoid remembering.
Well, I reread them, I mean, I do that, and I still like them. So don't be too shy. Yeah.
Well, I always read these guys as news, you know. I mean, I never read anybody to memorize, really. I mean, it just was new, you know. I mean, so you read the people you're interested in to find out what's up.
Yeah, yeah, and what was out, yeah.
Well, it's still up. I mean, it's been up for a long time and it stays up. I mean,
Yeah, so it's
we invented Viagra.
What did we say the other day? What was the name of our new publishing company?
What's that?
What was the name of our new publishing company we came up with?
I can't remember.
Blue Pill Publishing.
No, I mean, but that's true though. I mean, it took a while for everyone to read everybody, because everybody is doing new things, and so it was interesting. Well, we have so many, what you could do, I mean, I could do is, you know, recite a great number of names of poets I love and read, who are probably unknown to anyone, you know, outside of our, you know, reading, people who are very important and doing very that were not, I mean, you can't name them or recite them exactly.
Double Ray, for instance.
Right.
We could name Double Ray, couldn't we?
William Butler is. Nobody is
I don't know, I mean,
Rilke.
particular words.
Could do him. Yeah. I think it's the other way around. Rilke is not as great as yes.
I think the other way around is that you can remember sort of specific works in the sense that it all became a kind of a collaboration, and the works are
Yeah.
fragmentary in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
there are
yeah.
a whole lot of people collaborating in what was sort of an esprit du temps, but of whatever age it was, I don't know. Unless, I don't know, maybe Gunnar has a poem. I don't know, I was just thinking that maybe there is a poem that actually you think, well, it's the poem of the age, but I don't know.
No, I wouldn't say so. But I would disagree with Anselm a little because Rilke is not for me one of those boring Germans. He's as...
Well, no.
I remember one line now by Rilke who says,
Yeah.
that's the house in the Nacht, which I think, I don't know why, but I think it's a beautiful
Oh,
line.
it's a great, I mean, he's got some great lines. Yeah.
But it doesn't work if you translate it, this is the last house in the night.
It's also last night in the dark. Yeah, but it's the last house, it's like the last house where the light goes out. Yeah.
The 3 lines by Stephen Mitchell translation, which is quite...
Ouch.
Well, no, I mean, mostly not, but I mean, those 3 lines are great.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, good.
Just on the subject of collaboration, in terms of if you were, do you think the idea of collaborating, adding music to your words could or would or has enhanced or do you think that adding music, I think you understand that, adding music to your words would ever or could ever or does enhance what you're saying, or is what you write enough?
Well, I think, yeah. Well, I just wrote some poems after Katrina when Johnson, who of the New Orleans Klezmer All-Stars, said, do you have any poems about Katrina? Because we want to get some musicians into a studio in New Orleans right after the storm because they would like to come back to New Orleans to record it. And so I wrote some for them in one night, and they all came back and they made a CD which is in this book. And they actually used the words, but they're all different musicians. And really, it wasn't about my musical ear, it was about them arranging the words to make music.
Have any of your other works been, any other poets been used in music? Oh, of course, Gunnar's a great choice.
Well, I was reading for 30 years or so with jazz bands. But I mean, I like it because it's nice performing and it's nice to go on tour with other people and have some company. And it's also very good because you can take out the pauses between the line without people thinking that this was the end of the poem and start applauding to you. And you get, you become a much better reader because especially blues, it goes so deeply into the rhythm of your body and breathing, so it's so close to the heartbeats, and it brings, I think I'm reading much better with music than a cappella. Yes. I don't know about that. Well, come to one of my
Well, that's a special gift because you have to hear the musicians and collaborate with them. I mean,
and they have to hear you.
Yeah,
Which is-
and you can't have drummers because they're impossible.
Well, no,
They drive right ahead of you, you know.
You know, I was a jazz drummer, and, you know,